Journey with Judy. Honest, open, transparent. It's hot.
There's no such thing as perfect people. There's no such thing as a perfect life. So come as you are, broken and scarred. Lift up your heart and be amazed and be changed by a perfect.
Good morning. This show is going to be a little bit crazy because I told Robin I really have no idea if I'll ever have a point between now and when the show ends. I think I'll have a lot of different points, and I always pray that something resonates with you as a listener, whether you listen every Sunday or whether you've just happened to tune into this station. I trust that God has brought you here for a reason. So open your heart and open your mind and try to relate, not to the insanity in my life, but how it might be that God might be speaking to you this Sunday morning. So, guys, I'm just going to give you a couple highlights. So I flew for the first time without any assistance. I can't tell you what that means, but I will in the second segment. I did my first webinar, which is when you have to invite people and you're on a computer doing a facilitation. There's just some firsts for Judy Hehr and some things that I have put off for so long out of fear. That I finally faced those things and I got to the other side of them, and I'm just so, Rob's, I'm like so on cloud nine about that. Yeah. So, but here's the thing is sometimes we set out to do stuff and it just doesn't work out as planned. Right. And so last Friday night, my man and I, we were kind of looking forward to the girls being gone. I only have 2 kids home now. 2 are at college, and in not that I'm counting, but in 140 days, there'll be the 3rd one gone. And so I'm mindful of the time when my 2 kids are around, but I'm also mindful of the time when my daughters aren't around. And so it's funny because someone invited me to go do something Friday night, and I had said, I'm not willing to give up my night with Bob because I knew the girls were going to be gone. And so, you know, we always do nothing. I mean, we're not a couple who goes out a lot. We're not on the A list for a lot of invitations. But the reality is I dig just doing nothing. I would rather sit around at home with my man, read a book, watch a show that we like, something that we might have taped earlier in the week, and then just have some alone time than go out and be in places and spaces that, like, I'm just not digging. And so I was kind of looking forward to the evening. And it's funny because when Bob said, what's for dinner, like I was looking forward to it enough, but like I didn't have a meal plan. I didn't really have a plan. I just went into it like, okay, well, it's our night alone without the girls and we're going to, take advantage of it. And of course I did have a vision of what that might look like. I was hoping my man had the same vision of what that might look like. And I'll let you imagine what you thought it might have wanted to look like. So here's the deal. We spent from 6 p.m. until 1 a.m. crying. We were crying. There were times when we stopped crying, but most of the time we were crying. And what was so beautiful was the reason that we were crying. And so I'm going to ask you to stay tuned. And on the other side of the break, I'll tell you a little bit about why my man and I had a Friday night date night that really mostly was spent crying. We'll talk about that when we get back. Your Journey with Judy right here on Lake 96.1. All right, so welcome back. You're journeying with Judy right here on Lake 96.1 on the Journey with Judy show. And we went to the break talking about the fact that my man and I had this date night planned. And I don't know if I kind of like the word date night, as long as everyone's on the same page about like what the date night's supposed to be. Because something about us women, we're looking for something sometimes a little bit different than our man is looking for on a date night, right? Now I'm going to keep this show PG, but the reality is as women, what satisfies us or what leaves us feeling like that was a successful evening with our man, oftentimes is just a tad bit, and let's be honest, completely different than what our man thought was going to be a successful date night evening. And so I was kind of open to what was going to happen. And as it turned out, I'm pretty sure when Bob asked what we were going to eat for dinner, I think I had a protein shake, and I think my man ate like crackers with peanut butter and jelly. Okay, so I felt like an epic failure in that regard. And I had big aspirations to make up in another area for where I failed in the kitchen. But the reality is we sat down and started watching television. And we started watching a show that I think I've seen it once or twice before, but in this particular instance, it was a show that we both love. Like my kids, I don't know about you, Robs, but my kids would sit and watch the Kardashians all day or some ridiculous show like that. No judgment. It's just not it's just not a feel good show for me. I like a feel good show. I like reality shows. I like those, The Voice, like stuff like that where we can watch it as a family and we can really get excited about people's lives changing. Well, this particular show is called Undercover Boss. Now, there's no religious affiliation with it whatsoever, but it is a show that can really make you feel good at the end of it, because what happens is, and I highly recommend, I don't even know when it's on, I just know that for some reason we had an Undercover Boss binge marathon on Friday night, and my man and I were in our respective spaces and places in our family room and watched this show from the moment the girls left at 7 p.m. until like 1 a.m. nonstop. We were bawling our eyes out. And, I love when my man cries. Like, he doesn't cry as outwardly as I do, but I know that he was so moved. And here's the deal. These guys or women, CEOs of these companies, decide that they want to get in touch with their employees and what's really going on. So they're willing to make what might not be visible to them visible. So they set out on this journey to get down and dirty and do the very things that they expect of their employees. And now remember, most of these are big companies, Robs, right? These are Fortune 100 organizations. These guys are sitting in a C-suite, living in a $2 and $5 million home, and they decide that they are going to position themselves as a worker of theirs, right? So they go in as a cashier, a forklift driver, like whatever the company is, they go and for 1 week they're in different positions and they're undercover. So nobody knows, nobody's supposed to know that they are the CEO of the company. And so what's so beautiful about it is they allow themselves to walk in someone else's shoes. What's so incredible about this show is they actually see things from a different perspective. And regardless of what someone may have reported back to them about a particular situation in their organization, they walked in it. They lived it, they saw it, and they did it. And I don't know about you, but I was so relating to the fact that we do that in life, whether it's personally or professionally in intimate relationships or acquaintances. We make some assumptions about things that they must be this way because of that, or because this is the way I see it, this must be the way it is. And the reality is it's so not true, right? And so these people had such courage to step out of their comfort zone. And remember last week, if you tuned in last week, we talked about this guy, blind Bartimaeus, who stepped out of his comfort zone. He knew that he had this vision, and he was going to do whatever it took to make that vision a reality. To the point when opportunity made itself available, he knew that it had a shelf life, and he knew that he had to take advantage of it. And so he removed this cloak of comfort in order to find himself in a position, he positioned himself where he could get what it is that he really wanted. So these CEOs of this organization, here's what they said. I want this. I want to know what's really going on, and I want to be the best CEO, and I want my people to appreciate working for my particular organization and see to it that they were following the vision and the values of the company. Well, what's so crazy about this show is these CEOs encounter things that they never thought were the reality. It was so funny. And I just thought of this on why I'm talking. In one case, the CEO says to this guy at True Values, what are we going to do today on the floor? And the guy goes, we're going to smoke a lot of pot and we're going to look at a lot of women. And the CEO, this guy, he wanted to rip off his disguise and be able, but what he did is he stayed in the situation long enough to see that even though this particular employee came off as someone who completely disregarded the values of the company, the reality was he was a tremendous employee. And so what's so cool about it is they do things they have never done, honestly, never done, because they are willing to see things from a different perspective and make those, it's like they just know that they had to go the extra mile, be in someone else's shoes to see something from a different perspective in order to either embrace that which was good or be willing to change that which needed addressing. And I'm wondering this Sunday morning, how many of you are willing to bring into focus those very things that aren't what you know they could be, should be, or would be? But to put yourself in those situations with people that you might deem less than you or living a different lifestyle than you, having different values than you. And how willing are you to put yourself in that person's shoes, be in that place and space with them to see what you might not otherwise get to see? Because I got to tell you, what was so amazing is in so many instances, what these CEOs of these organizations found were loyal, trustworthy, hardworking people that have been through so much. I mean, they have overcome so many obstacles, whether they were putting themselves through college or they worked 2 or 3 second jobs. There was one situation where the woman was homeless, living in a homeless shelter with her 3 children. And here this CEO is hearing this as he's living in a $5 million home, and this girl is working 2 jobs. And so anyway, the point of the CEO, the example of the undercover bosses was at the end of the show, the CEO uncovers who he really is. He makes himself known to these people. And in some cases, they were scared. Like they were really scared because they might have said or done something that was against the vision and the values of the organization. But in many cases, and we got to go to break in a minute. I can tell Rob's saying, let's wrap it up. In more cases than not, one interaction with this life-changing person changed their entire life. They were given not only a different perspective, but they were given financial blessings. They were given new perspectives, incredible otherwise opportunities that would have never happened. And the bottom line was their faith was restored. And I'll tell you what, there was one thing that this show had in common. The 20 different versions of the show with 20 different organizations and 20 different employees. There was one thing that changed everything. And we're going to talk about that when we get back. You're journeying with Judy right here on Lake 96.1, and we'll be back after the break. Thank you to Greg Cunis, who makes this show possible.
I lose my way and I forget my name. Remind me who I am. In the mirror all I see is who I don't want to be. Remind me who I am.
Welcome back. You're journeying with Judy right here on Lake 96.1. And I'm telling you about how my man and I spent Friday night, our date night, watching TV, a particular show called Undercover Bosses. And the reason that I don't recommend a lot of things on the show, but the reason I recommend it is because it's real people in real life situations and real life, Fortune 100 huge organizations that employ countless numbers of people. And it's not everybody who is willing to put themselves in a situation to learn what's going on in every particular area of their business. Just like we're sometimes not willing to look at every single area of our life and look at those areas that we know we could improve upon. We know maybe things could be different and maybe even just celebrate those things that we might be doing well. And so these CEOs put themselves in they walked in the shoes of their employees. And oftentimes they found an entirely different perspective. They had no idea how committed, how loyal, how hardworking, what kind of obstacles these people who they employ have been through, yet they remain these loyal employees. And there's one thing, no matter what company was, being represented on this particular episode of the show, no matter what CEO and no matter what employee, the consistent thing with every one of the ultimate interactions where they unveiled who they really were and explained to the people what they were doing so well and why they went undercover, the one thing that changed everything and the one thing that was so consistent was the appreciation and the value that those people felt after this interaction. So these are people who are behind the scenes, making these things happen, making these companies run, right? I mean, they would be judged as the bottom of the barrel when in the reality of the situation is without them doing what they're doing, the way they're doing it, with the intentionality that they're doing it, this guy would not have the success that he's having within that particular organization. And so in some cases, Robs, it's so they pay off their student loans. They gave them a house. They pay for your wedding. I mean, the things that some of these people do in terms of their overwhelming generosity, I need a whole nother show to talk about it. But in every single instance, when the person was interviewed after this encounter with the CEO, when they walked out having this life-changing conversation, everybody said the same thing. It was that I finally felt appreciated and I felt valued and I felt that I have a hope today that I didn't have yesterday. And because of one conversation, these people who have stayed the course, who have continued to press in, who have fought all of these obstacles in their life, kept doing what they were doing, and their life was changed in an instant. And what was so cool was that this man or woman was so willing to make a connection with these people. And then this human connection is something that, I mean, this is how God created us, to be in connection with other people. And it isn't that beautiful, Robs? Like, it was so great to watch these CEOs, CFOs, whoever they were in the C-suite of these companies, the people that were in charge of everything, how they came down. They came down and made themselves known and then stood in front of these people and affirmed them with their support and their love and their appreciation. And, I can make everything about Jesus, and I kept thinking that is what God does. That is what he willingly does in every single situation. That genuine desire to come down, making himself known to us, wanting us to make him known in the ways that we talk to people, the way we love, the way we do our job, the way we do everything and anything. And not always will we get Robs. Not always is someone going to step into our life and give us, some unreasonable amount of money or pay our debt off or give us a promotion. The reality is we get to represent Jesus all the time, every time. And it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. And that's what I noticed too about this show is it didn't matter what other employees within the company were doing. It mattered what that particular individual held as his particular or her particular vision and value. And they did not deviate from it. And the fact was is they were rewarded for it so incredibly. And they, in some cases, Robin, because of what they were doing, new policies were created within a whole organization. So what I do does affect you, and what you do does affect another person. And because of them staying the course, because of them not stopping, pressing into the opportunity that was given to them, no matter what it felt like. That's the big thing in my house right now is when my kids say, I don't feel like it. I don't care if you don't feel like it. Like we learned that last week talking about Bartimaeus. If you just do it, the emotion will follow. We do things we don't feel like doing because it is not about us. We got to move from the I and the me to the us and the we. And that is what these people did. That is what happened in these huge organizations. People's entire livelihood was changed because one person was making a difference. And this life, my friends, is not about making a point. It is always, every time, all the time, about making a difference. Now, here's the bad news. The bad news is I got no more time. The good news is next week I have got to tell you about the time. Robs, I literally flew by myself without any assistance. Now, I want to say, let me just clarify, those of you who know me. I didn't have my man, I didn't have my coworker, and I didn't even have my prescription bottle. And here's what I can tell you. When I got on the plane, after flying to Florida, when I returned for my return flight, I want you to know that the entire flight staff was waiting for me to get on the plane. They were hugging me and loving on me. I mean, it was the most incredible thing because I faced this fear and something that has completely held me back. So we're going to have to save that for next week. So thanks for journeying with Judy. Definitely watch Undercover Bosses. It is a feel-good show. And in the meantime, you got to be stepping up your game and keep pressing in, acting like Jesus, looking like Jesus, and preaching the gospel, and only when necessary, use words. Have a great Sunday. We'll be back next week. Keep it hot, honest, open, and transparent. Peace out.